on Mount Zion, a lamb.
This week on The Lost Teachings of Jesus, Elizabeth Clare Prophet presents part 2 of a 3-part series on the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas, delivered in New Orleans. Buried by monks over 1,600 years ago, the Gospel of Thomas contains the secret sayings that the living Jesus spoke. Listen now as Mrs. Prophet examines this exciting text that reveals the diversity of early Christian thought.
We spoke of the Gnostics the other evening, and as you know, they were members of a number of different religious groups that flourished in the 2nd century AD. This was a time when Christianity was characterized more by its diversity than by a unified body of beliefs. The Christian Gnostics themselves held divergent views. Some were strictly ascetic, others were accused of being morally licentious. But they did share a common belief that the means to salvation was not through faith, as the Orthodox clergy claimed, but through gnosis, spelled G-N-O-S-I-S. Gnosis is the Greek word meaning knowledge or understanding. To the Gnostics, gnosis meant self-knowledge, knowledge of God and knowledge of the universe. The motto that has come down to us is man, know thyself, man, know thy enemy. The Gnostics claimed to possess an advanced teaching that had been secretly handed down to them from Jesus through his closest disciples. The writings of the Gnostics were so thoroughly suppressed that until recently we possessed only a handful of their original works. An astounding discovery made in just the last 45 years has shed new light on the Gnostics and their teachings. In 1945, an Arab peasant accidentally discovered some 52 leather-bound Gnostic texts in an earthenware jar buried by a huge boulder near Nag Hammadi, Egypt. These texts have been dubbed the Nag Hammadi Library. The manuscripts were made in about 350 to 400 AD, but the original texts from which they were copied date back to the 2nd century. In at least one case, the Gospel of Thomas, the manuscripts may include traditions from the second half of the 1st century, which is the same period of time in which the 4 Gospels we have were written down. Some scholars have surmised that monks at the nearby monastery, established by Pachomius, may have buried these Gnostic works in the 4th century, when the Archbishop Athanasius decreed that all apocryphal books reflecting heretical ideas be purged. Other scholars believe that the collection belonged to non-Christians who lived in that area of Egypt. It was not until 1977, 1,600 years after the texts were buried, that a full English translation of the Nag Hammadi Library was finally published. These Gnostic texts are significant because they tell us much about the diversity of early Christian religious thought and the real religious controversies of the day. They also reveal parallels between the paths taught by Jesus and Gautama, the paths of the Christ and the Buddha. The translation of the Gospel of Thomas that I will be teaching from today is a compilation that I have put together based on 3 different translations of this Gospel. Marvin Myers, from his book, The Secret Teachings of Jesus, the 4 Gnostic Gospels. Thomas O. Lambdin's from the Nag Hammadi Library in English, and Bentley Layton's from the Gnostic Scriptures. I have done this because I have found that each translator can only translate according to his understanding. And already, even though these texts have but recently been discovered, we find that scholars and interpreters are interpreting according to their interpretation of the contents, and they are not necessarily faithful to the words that are written. This has been the problem of the teachings of Jesus Christ for 2,000 years. The scribes who copy them, the doctors of the church who interpret them, All think they know what is meant and what is intended, so little by little they change words, they change pronouns, they change how you refer to God, how you refer to the sons and daughters of God, how you refer to Jesus. So I have gone through these Gospels line by line, and I have assigned my research committee to work on this with me, so that I have put together in what I'm reading to you today what I believe to be the most faithful compilation of a translation of the original work. So first of all, I'd like to give you some background on the Gospel of Thomas. Scholar Helmut Kester writes in his preface to the Gospel of Thomas in the Nag Hammadi library, quote, "The Gospel of Thomas is a collection of traditional sayings of Jesus. The Coptic Gospel of Thomas, discovered at Nag Hammadi, was translated from the Greek. All the Nag Hammadi texts are written in Coptic, a vernacular form of the ancient Egyptian language, now used only in the liturgy of the Coptic Church. The authorship of this gospel is attributed to Didymus Judas Thomas. A large number of the sayings of the Gospel of Thomas have parallels in the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, as well as in the Gospel of John. Some of the sayings are also known to occur in non-canonical Gospels. If one considers the form and wording of the individual sayings of the Gospel of Thomas in comparison with the form in which they are preserved in the New Testament, the Gospel of Thomas almost always appears to have preserved a more original form of the traditional saying, or presents versions which are independently based on more original forms. In its most original form, the Gospel of Thomas may well date from the 1st century. Kester continues, the Gospel of Thomas in its oldest form stressed the finding of wisdom, or of the kingdom of the Father, in the knowledge or gnosis of oneself, guided by the sayings of Jesus. The first saying of the Gospel of Thomas states that the interpretation of the sayings is identical with the finding of eternal life. This understanding of salvation is similar to that expressed in many passages of the Gospel of John, in which the finding of truth and life is bound to the words of Jesus. For instance, in John 6:63, Jesus says, "The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit and they are life." Every word that Jesus spoke as he taught us was a chalice for the divine word, the word of which he was the incarnation, the Spirit of the living God, the Christ, the eternal Logos, and the Divine Mother. And so when he spoke, his words carried this tremendous vibration of the light of our divine source. And that is why we study and live on the words of Jesus Christ, because we are drinking in that light. Jesus' words and teachings are as much of a communion cup as the bread and the wine that we partake of. We are assimilating his body of light essence, and his blood containing that light essence. And so by meditating upon his words, when we have his words, we enter into his life. Jesus was continually emphasizing in the Gnostic Gospels that we should drink from the same source from which he had drunk, and therefore become like him. He stressed that God wanted the disciples to become like himself, to become equal to him and a part of him, and then they would be one with the Father, Mother God, as he was one. These sayings then that we will go over from the Gospel of Thomas show the teachings whereby Jesus imparts to us the how to walk in his footsteps, how to understand the mysteries, how to probe these mysteries, how to become the mystery, how to become the embodiment of that mystery. Verse 9, Jesus said, Behold, the sower went out, took a handful of seeds and scattered them. Some fell on the road, and the birds came and ate them. Others fell on the rock, and they did not take root in the soil or produce any heads of grain. Others fell among thorns, and the thorns choked the seeds, and worms consumed them. Still others fell on good soil and brought forth a good crop. It yielded 60 per measure and 120 per measure. So we have the similar parable of Jesus. And we see that this describes states of consciousness. John the Baptist went before Jesus to prepare the way of the Lord, to call people to repentance, to rebuke the fallen ones who would have no part with him, and yet they too came out to be baptized. When they fall upon the consciousness that is a road, that is hard, that cannot be penetrated, the birds come along and take them. Falling on the rock of stubborn pride and willfulness, the seeds of the Christ consciousness cannot take root in the soil. The thorns of self-defensiveness choke the seeds, and then the worms consume them. Then there is the good and the fallow soil. There, when the seeds are planted in that state of consciousness, they will yield a good crop, 60 per measure, 120 per measure. Verse 10, Jesus said, I have thrown fire on the world, and behold, I am guarding it until it is ablaze. The guarding of the fire is the role and the calling of the keeper of the flame. The fire of the heart must be kindled and held steady. The fire that becomes a fire of anger and condemnation and hatred is out of control. It is a misuse of the fire of the living Christ. Jesus had to bring fire to the world because the world was dead and had no light. So he came to guard the fire, to keep it and keep it blazing, until each one of us should receive it and should also keep that flame of everlasting life. The spiritual fire is the most precious gift that we have from the Lord. It is the essence of our life. Misused, it can consume and destroy us. Correctly used, it will consume the darkness of this world. It will bind the fallen angels. It will heal the many. And it will give to us ultimately the resurrection and the life. Verse 11, Jesus said, this heaven will pass away, and the heaven above it will pass away. The dead are not alive, and the living will not die. During the days when you ate what is dead, you made it alive. When you become enlightened, what will you do? On the day when you were one, you became two. But when you became two, what will you do? You can see how these passages are almost Zen in their composition. You can see the strains of the path of the Buddha and of the East. You can hear Jesus' mind and his sayings come forth. Out of the 17 years that he spent diligently studying and preparing for his mission between the ages of 12, 13, and 29. All is relative. The heaven world we know today, that is our etheric body, is really divided in two. It's a higher and lower etheric body. The lower etheric body records the records of karma that are negative. The higher etheric body contains the blueprint of our original soul pattern, that comes out of the image and likeness of the Christ self. Still, the higher etheric body is yet a lower heaven. So the lower heaven of the etheric body will pass away when those records are consumed, and even the heaven above it will pass away when we reach a higher state that is above all of these four lower bodies that we wear. Jesus says the dead are not alive. Who are the dead? The dead are the ones in whom there is no longer a living fire in the heart. They walk the earth. They talk, they speak, they work, they play, they study. But they are not considered alive in the sense that they have allowed the divine spark to go out. Therefore, there is no true life in them, and they are the living dead. Jesus says, the living will not die. The living are those who are alive in Christ, bonded to Christ, have drunk the eternal waters, the waters of everlasting life. They are alive, and they will not die. The dead and the living coexist side by side. They communicate, they speak the same language, they are in the same household. One is taken, and another is left. One has the flame, and one does not. During the days when you ate what is dead, you made it alive. We partake of dead works, dead doctrines, dead foods, dead consciousness, and we give to it the life of God that is flowing through us. This is not productive. Therefore, when you become enlightened, what will you do? You will take in live doctrines, live foods, the live consciousness of God, and you will add to it the crystal river of life flowing through you. Therefore, you and all that you take in will be in a state of enlightenment. How can you be enlightened if part of you is not living, is not alive? On the day when you were one in the white fire body with God in the great central sun. On the day when you were created, you were one, but when you were sent forth to manifest the Alpha and the Omega, you became two, twin flames out of the fiery ovoid. But when you become two, what will you do? What do you do when you become two and you lose the way and you depart from the mystery school and you depart from Lord Maitreya? And then you begin to make karma and you are separated and you are lost and you are apart. What will you do when you enter into a sense of duality and forget your sense of oneness in God? You see what you will do. You will dwell in realms of relativity, and you will not know how to return to the point of oneness until you meet someone who has that point of oneness and is the magnet for the central sun and can draw you back to the heart of your first love, the living Christ, the Lord God, the white fire body of the I am that I am, where once again you and your twin flame are one. Before we can become one with our twin flame, fully one in the highest sense of the word, we must balance our individual karma. We can be together in life balancing that karma, but the ultimate spiritual union is based upon having nothing that separates us, basically our negative karma. Before we come to that place, but while we are in the process of being disciples, what we desire to become is the twin of Jesus Christ, the twin in the sense of embodying the profile of Christhood that he manifested, his great example. When we have that master-disciple relationship to Jesus, then we will not fail again in establishing the divine love and the love of this octave with our twin flame. Verse 12. The disciples said to Jesus, "We know you will leave us. Who is going to be our leader then?" Jesus said to them, "No matter where you reside, you are to go to James the just, for whose sake heaven and earth came into being." How can Jesus say that for one man, one apostle, perhaps not even yet perfected, heaven and earth came into being? He can say this because he has the understanding that he has given to us. Each one having the divine spark and the Christ potential is to God the beloved. For the one beloved, God will create a heaven and an earth, that that one might return to him, might go through the experience world, and return home with the crown of everlasting life. It is the mystery of God. We think in terms of millions and billions of souls, and for them, Lord Jesus Christ has come. One day when I was preaching a sermon in our church in Pasadena, in our auditorium, I had the great vision that if I were the only sinner in the entire world, Jesus Christ would have took incarnation to save me. It was a profound moment of truly knowing the Lord and knowing the meaning in this life of being born again. The sense that no matter how far I could stray in the sense of sin and karma, yet the soul of me was worthy for Jesus to come and save me. Think of the depths of the worst sin that you attribute to yourself in this life or any lifetime. Still at that point of sinning, you are worthy for Jesus to take incarnation, to sweep you up into his heart and take you back to God. So James the Just was surely a most wondrous disciple, one whom Jesus saw could succeed him and could teach the others and set the example. Now we come to verse 13, the who I am like passage. This is a wondrous teaching because it gives us the nature of Jesus as a teacher and Jesus as a human being. He, like all of us, would like to know how his friends perceive him for two reasons. He wants to know if they are really getting it, if they're really getting the teaching and the message. But then he would like to know how he appears to them. Is he really coming across? So he said to his disciples, "Compare me to someone and tell me whom I am like." Simon Peter said, "You are like a righteous angel." Matthew said, "You are like a wise philosopher." Thomas said, "Master, my mouth is wholly incapable of saying whom you are like." Jesus said, "I am not your master. Because you have drunk, you have become intoxicated from the bubbling spring which I have measured out." And he took Thomas and withdrew, and told him 3 things. When Thomas came back to his friends, they asked him, "What did Jesus tell you?" Thomas said to them, "If I tell you even one of the things he told me, you will pick up rocks and stone me. Then fire will come forth from the rocks and devour you." These are amazing sayings of the Lord. They are so powerful so concentrated in their essence, you can see why they were left out of the canon. They surely threaten the relationship of the parishioner and the priest. For here is a living word, the living word that came down from heaven as the bread of life. Indeed, it was so that the disciples had become intoxicated with the light that Jesus measured out to them, the bubbling spring. The only one to whom Jesus gave the secrets of the kingdom on this occasion was Thomas, because Thomas said he was incapable of defining this universal, infinite being of the Christ of Jesus. Not a righteous angel, not a wise philosopher, with no circumscription that we can define, so is the presence of the living Christ with us. I am certain that Jesus wanted the response to be, Lord, you are like me, because I am like you. But this was not their state of consciousness in that moment. To affirm that, the point of the twin for which Thomas is famous, could have aroused the ire, the enmity, and the jealousy of the others. Did Jesus tell him, you are like me, for you have seen that the Christ cannot be defined? To have a sense that someone was closer to Jesus than they were. When rocks are thrown in anger, then that fire of anger must return to the one who throws them. Better not to give them a provocation for anger. Better to keep the mysteries of God in your heart. Verse 14. Jesus said to them, if you fast, you will bring sin upon yourselves. If you pray, you will be condemned. If you give to charity, you will harm your spirits. When you go into any country and wander from place to place, and the people receive you, eat what they serve you, and heal their sick. For what goes into your mouth will not contaminate you. Rather, what comes out of your mouth will contaminate you. How does fasting bring sin upon yourselves? In one way, when you fast, you allow the karma to come out of your pores, out of your organs and your cells. You are detoxifying the manifestation of your karma that is in your body. Our bodies carry the physical karma that we have. So if you are ready to deal with an extra amount of karma and toxins, then you fast with the expectation that you must perform rituals of exorcism for the binding of the entities and demons that fasten themselves to the toxins of the body. In the sense of going from town to town, preaching the word, and being offered a meal, it is best to accept it and not to be pious and apart and to fast when someone has prepared you a meal. Jesus says, if you pray, you will be condemned. Because prayer brings down the light of God when it is true prayer, it always evokes the condemnation of the world, perhaps impersonally and indirectly, but it is there. Because this world does not want God, it does not want the light. Individual people in this world want God and want the light. But the rulers of the powers of darkness of this world are not interested in anyone or any organization who is an open door for the light and for God to enter. If you give to charity, you will harm your spirits. This is a hard saying. We must understand that in giving to charity, we must pray that the individual who is the recipient of our charity might receive from us a teaching and a training whereby that one can elevate himself. If our giving is to the detriment of the soul development of the individual, we must take care that with the gift we give, there is an impartation of knowledge and of the mysteries. Eat what you are served. Call forth the light of the Holy Spirit to bless and transmute that substance, and turn and heal their sick. If you are going to heal the sick as you travel, then you must store light in your chakras that you can transfer to those in need. If you have the mastery of the alchemy of transmutation of food, then you are exempt from dietary law. If you do not, you should obey that law very strictly, taking care to realize that what comes out of your mouth is a far greater karma in most cases than what you take in.
You're watching Elizabeth Clare Prophet, world-renowned author and founder of Summit University. Summit University is located at the beautiful Royal Teton Ranch in Park County, Montana, just north of Yellowstone National Park. If you'd like more information, call 800-323-5228. That's 800-323-5228.
Verse 15. Jesus said, "When you see one who was not born of a woman, bow down and worship. That is your Father." When Jesus used the word Father in the New Testament, he was speaking of Guru. When he said, "I and my Father are one," he was saying, "I and my Guru, Lord Maitreya, are one. The Father worketh hitherto, and I work. My Guru worketh hitherto, and I work with him." Jesus descended in the lineage of Sanat Kumara through Gautama Buddha, Lord Maitreya. Our heart tie to Jesus is through beloved Padma Sambhava. There are great beings of light who have walked the earth, who have not been born to this world in the normal course of events. I don't know of any other scripture where Jesus counsels us to worship, where one is wholly God identified and God in manifestation. There is the point of worship. Verse 16. Jesus said, "Men think perhaps that it is peace which I have come to cast upon the world. They do not know that it is dissension which I have come to cast upon the earth, fire, sword, and war." This is a holy dissension. It is the dividing of the way. Without fire and sword and war, we cannot separate out from the unreal self or from those who are determined to continue to embody that unreal self. The pain of this universal chemicalization becomes the bliss of transmutation, and then the fusion wholly to reality. We must fear not, to embrace our karma, to work through it, and to work through it in love. But the day and the hour comes when we must separate out, when the karma is finished. And to stay longer, yoked to bondage and darkness, is to make karma again and again. People think of peace where everything is quiet. But in those quiet, peaceful situations where things are not right beneath, then we with our Lord must take up the sword to cut ourselves free and let others deal with their states of consciousness that they have chosen. Without the coming of Christ, without the coming of the Guru, there is not power in the earth to separate us from evil. This is a major purpose of Jesus' coming. And this is why the world is enraged in the presence of the Guru, because it is the mantle of God that forces the separation. And all of the children of the light and all of the sons and daughters of God are waiting for the moment when that one cometh to deliver us, to separate us out from those chains of bondage. There will be 5 in a house. There will be 3 against 2, and 2 against 3, the Father against the Son, and the Son against the Father. And they will stand solitary. This is because of free will. Because free will choices are made, the Son of God must perform this work. Your Christ self is able, but you must grow in strength, in the power of the Lord, to see through your life. Verse 17, Jesus said, I shall give you what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, what no hand has touched, and what has never arisen in a human mind. Jesus is transferring to us divine knowledge, gnosis, not through the eye, the ear, the hand, or through the human mind. How many of you know the experience of suddenly becoming aware in a spherical sense in your aura of a truth, of a presence of God? Nothing you heard or saw, the living presence descending. That awareness is the gentle presence of the Holy Spirit enlightening you. Keep a notebook and treasure every point of enlightenment. Bentley Layton has translated what has never arisen in a human mind as what has not come upon the human heart. In Hebrew biblical tradition, the heart is considered to be the seat of the intellect. The concepts of heart and mind are so interconnected that the words are sometimes used interchangeably. Robert Denton writes of this Hebrew tradition in the Interpreter's Dictionary of the Bible. He says, more distinctively Hebrew than the thought of the heart as the seat of the emotions is the conception that it is the center of intellectual life. The process of cogitation takes place in the heart. Thoughts belong there, and there one meditates on the deep things of life. Because of its concrete character, the Hebrew language can hardly express the idea to think, except by the phrase, to say in the heart. One example is Genesis 27:41, where it says, and Esau said in his heart. Denson says, with the heart man makes his plans and seeks knowledge and understanding. For example, Proverbs 16:9 says, a man's heart deviseth his way, but the Lord directeth his steps. In Ecclesiastes 8:16 we read, I applied my heart to know wisdom. In addition, says Denton, the heart is the storehouse of memory. All of this is true. And the heart is the point of our contact with Jesus through the Sacred Heart. But the awareness that comes upon us that I am speaking of does not even pass through the heart. It just is. It simply is divine understanding. The disciples said to Jesus, tell us about the end. Jesus said, have you already discovered the beginning? that now you can seek after the end? For where the beginning is, there the end will be. Like the serpent swallowing his tail, in the beginning, God is. And we return to that ending by the power of Alpha and Omega. Jesus said, I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the ending. I am that I am means the same thing. I am in the beginning, that I am, which I am in the ending. Blessed is he who stands at the beginning. He will know the end and will not taste of death. Alpha is the beginning, Omega the return or the ending. Life is a circle. Verse 19, Jesus said, Blessed is he who came into being before he came into being. If you become my disciples and hearken to my sayings, these stones will serve you. For there are 5 trees in paradise for you. Jesus speaks in the canonical Gospels as he rebukes the fallen ones. He says, I am from above, you are from beneath. He is speaking of the fact that they took incarnation out of hell, where they spent the so-called interlife. He has descended from realms of light above. The one who came into being before he came into this world is the one who descended from God. He is blessed. The one who did not have being or divine consciousness or the divine spark, because he came from beneath, is not blessed. He did not have divine being before he came into being on earth. The fallen angels were stripped of their original light. And so they are not blessed but cursed, for there is no God in them. If you become my disciples, he is speaking to his disciples. What is wanting in them? If you become my disciples, if you become fastened to me, if the mighty flow of light makes us one in the figure 8 because you will to be my twin, you will to be the mirror image of the Christ that I am. If you hearken to my sayings, if you drink of the light of my word, these stones will serve you. The entire matter cosmos will serve you, for you are locked in to this master-disciple relationship, and all that I am and all that I have is thine. The reason being, there are 5 trees in paradise for you. If you look at the chart of the presence again, as we were talking about the causal body last evening, you remember that there are 5 inner spheres within the concentric color bands, the 5 secret rays. The 5 trees in paradise are the 5 initiations of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas. The Dhyani Buddhas are these trees of life, each one bearing fruits. As we gave our meditation last evening, we called to the 5 Dhyani Buddhas for their wisdoms to counteract poisons. If we partake of any of these trees prematurely, then we will not have the power of the wisdom of the tree, but we will have its perversion, its poisons. Then we will seek and go after the Dhyani Buddha to affix ourselves to that one until we have overcome these poisons by the power of the fruit of the tree. There are 5 trees in paradise for you. They do not change, summer or winter, and their leaves do not drop. Whoever knows about them will not taste death. Jesus is speaking in this era where paradise has been lost, for the first tree was violated. Therefore, at a certain place on the path, the initiations are reintroduced to the disciples, to you, the disciples of Jesus. And so step by step, as you put on and become the embodiment of the 5 wisdoms, and you so saturate and intensify those wisdoms in your life, they become the antidote of the poisons of your karma, your desirings, all of the going out of the way of alignment. And sealed in these 5 secret rays of your causal body around your I Am presence is the foundation, the complement of those trees. Those trees themselves will be in those spheres, even as paradise itself is in your causal body. You will not taste of death once the wisdom of the trees has transmuted the poisons. It is said that there were schools of Buddhism in the Holy Land at the time Jesus was crucified, survived the crucifixion, and moved on with his mission. That many who followed him studied Buddhism. Jesus, we know, studied Buddhism in India. The followers of Jesus were much more educated than the Gospels give them credit for. Jesus would not be speaking to them in these terms if they did not have the background to understand them. The level of his teaching shows us the level of his students. Verse 20, the disciples said to Jesus, "Tell us what the kingdom of heaven is like." He said to them, "It is like a mustard seed, the tiniest of all seeds. But when it falls on prepared soil, it grows into a large plant and shelters the birds of the sky." Jesus is giving us the sense of the single seed and how in this seed and out of it is the entire pattern of your tree of life, the causal body, the fruits of it, the Christ consciousness, and your own manifestation. It shows the nucleus of cosmos in a single seed, even as we are born from a single seed and a single egg. The wonders of creation and the sense of the mystery of life beyond the physical are imparted to us by these simple miracles that happen every day. Verse 21, Mary said to Jesus, "Whom are your disciples like?" He said, "They are like little children living in a field that is not theirs. When the owners of the field come, they will say, 'Give our field back to us.' The children will take off their clothes in the presence of the owners and thus give the field back and return it to them." Marvin Meyer's comment on this passage is that it is the description of the life of discipleship. He says the statement, "They are like little children living in a field that is not theirs," maintains that the true disciple gives up bodily and worldly attachments. The removal of clothing seems to be linked in a symbolic way to the release of one's claim upon a piece of property. I see the removal of clothing being the transfiguration of changing garments. One cannot wear the clothes of the former self and be a disciple of Jesus. One cannot enter into the field of the Guru's consciousness until one accelerates his own field. True it is, we let go the things of this world for service. For this reason I say, if the owner of a house knows that a thief is coming, the owner will be on guard before the thief arrives, and will not let the thief break into the house of the estate. As for you then, be on guard against the world. Gird yourselves and prepare for action, so that the robbers will find no way to prevail against you, for the trouble you expect will come. Let there be among you a man who understands. When the crop ripened, a reaper came quickly with sickle in hand and harvested it. Whoever has ears to hear ought to listen. As soon as the fruit of the tree of karma is ripened, it is plucked, or it falls to the earth. We must be aware of the cycles of completion. We must beware of the sowing and the reaping of karma. And when it is time to reap good works stored in the causal body, we must take care that we reap them and let not another profit from our harvest and take from us what is our own. Likewise, we must see the due season of the tree of karma and fulfill that karma quickly. As Jesus said, agree with thine adversary quickly whilst thou art in the way with him. Your chief adversary is yourself in the form of your returning karma. Therefore agree with it, move with it, transmute it, cast it into the sacred fire and move on, for the good fruits of your tree of life are also coming due. Verse 22. Jesus saw some babies nursing. He said to his disciples, "These nursing babies are like those who enter the kingdom." They said to him, "Then shall we enter the kingdom as babies?" That is exactly what Jesus said. Until we have the oneness of the child mind, we cannot enter the kingdom of God. The consciousness of God is not the duality of the ripened ego. Jesus said to them, "When you make the two into one, when you make the inner like the outer, and the outer like the inner, and the upper like the lower, when you make male and female into a single one, so that the male will not be male and the female will not be female. When you make eyes replacing an eye, a hand replacing a hand, a foot replacing a foot, and an image replacing an image, then you will enter the kingdom." The soul is a mirror. The soul that is at peace in the path of God's purity will reflect that image of the Christ from the Holy Christ self. And so Christ and the image will be one. You make the two one through the mirror. The soul becomes one with Christ only when the mirror of her selfhood does reflect that Christ. When you make the inner like the outer and the outer like the inner, it is the same process. As above, so below. And as it is below, so it is above. Male and female as the single one is the uniting of the caduceus, the spinal altar, the raising of the light. So that Christ comes into your temple and the female is made male. Christ is male, the soul is the feminine potential of being. When the soul unites to the bridegroom, the soul then is male. You are a single one when you are bonded, heart to heart with Jesus. The male will not be male, the female will not be female, for they have merged as one. Let your eye become the eye of your Christ self, your hand the hand of your Christ self, your foot the foot of your Christ self. The image of Christ be your true image. Then you will know the consciousness of that Christ whom you totally reflect. Verse 23, Jesus said, I shall choose you, 1 from 1,000, and 2 from 10,000, and these will stand as a single one. Jesus is seeing the oneness of his disciple, one with himself, one with his holy Christ self. The one who understands the law of the one can stand in a relationship of co-equality to the Master, because he has a sense of his co-measurement of his inner Christ to Jesus the Christ.
You've been watching The Lost Teachings of Jesus with Elizabeth Clare Prophet. This concludes part 2 of a 3-part series on the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas. For more information on the Lost Teachings of Jesus and Saint Germain, call toll-free 800-323-5228. The preceding program was presented by Summit University, Box A, Livingston, Montana, 59047 1390.